Okay, we're starting a little late, but I'm going to call the meeting to order, please. Please rise for pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Evening.
Can everybody hear me in the back okay? Okay, saw the chief nod, so thank you. Fighting a little bit of a cold, so if you would speak incoherently, please remind me to.
No, I'm not cold.
Doesn't work, I'll put Ray back here, I'll just leave.
My cough.
All right, roll call, please.
Councilmember Cousins?
Here.
Councilmember Fisher?
Yes.
Councilmember Knight is absent this evening. Councilmember Michelle?
Present.
Councilmember Smith?
Here.
Councilmember Tao?
Yeah.
Mayor Keo?
Here. Item C is approval of the meeting minutes. We have two sets, one from our regular city council meeting on January 22nd, and another from the work session that preceded the meeting on January 22nd.
I'll move both sets of minutes.
Moved by Smith, thank you.
Second.
Second by Tell, thank you. Mr. Smith, anything to note?
I have one minor thing,
Okay.
well, actually, maybe two. On page 6, under number 9, it says that, I made the motion and Zach supported it, but in my notes, I had written down Julie and supported it. But they may have both said it at the same time. I don't know whether Zach remembers doing that or.
I think we probably both did it at the same time.
Okay, so don't worry about it then. And then down under council comments, the comment I made about Comcast. After the word Comcast, if you could add the word office,
Okay.
so that people know what we're talking about. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Mr. Tell, anything?
No, thank you.
Other members of council? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving both sets of minutes, signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries, thank you. Tonight, we do have some prearranged participation. Jeff Hardcastle is here representing the Huron Waterloo Pathways Initiative. Jeff, welcome. He has placed in front of you, everybody should have these two pieces.
Hello. Hello.
Hello there.
Sean said, my name is Jeff Hardcastle. I'm the board chair of the Huron Waterloo Pathways Group, which is an NGO that was formed 3 years ago in Chelsea with Dexter and Chelsea residents. So what I'm going to do, I was told to keep it to about 10 minutes, and then if you guys want to go longer with questions, that's fine too. But I want to give you a brief overview of who we are and where we came from and where we're at with the entire non-motorized system for the county. As I said, we started 3 years ago with 15 volunteers in December 2014 and formed a group advocating to help build a pathway connecting initially Dexter and Chelsea. That was the motivation. After seeing the impact of the Metro Park Trail not into town, you know, everybody's been impressed with that all across the western part of the county. We wanted to do the same thing connecting Dexter and Chelsea. So we started working on that early 2015 and immediately saw the need to think more regionally. The Iron Bell initiative that Snyder had launched a few months prior to that was kind of taking hold with TAP, with the Department of Transportation and with the trust fund, who provide a lot of the funding. And they were already starting to look for funding preferences towards segments that would connect into the Iron Bell system, which, if you're not familiar with that, that's a statewide system that the DNR has developed now based on Snyder's initiative to connect the entire state from Belle Isle to Ironwood, with 2 long continuous trail corridors that run across the state.
Where would we connect then?
The border to border, the lower, the east-west section of the Iron Belt comes through Washtenaw County.
Okay.
The border to border has been part of that. The Washtenaw County's border to border trail system has been part of the Iron Belt. from its inception. It's the connection to the Lakelands Trail that runs across the south part of Livingston County and then out to Jackson and the Falling Waters, and then out eventually turning back to the north out by Kalamazoo. So Dexter's been on the Iron Bell route since the idea was first conceived, 3 years ago. So in the first few months, we found really good reception. We right away raised like $600,000 within 8 months to support that initiative, which allowed us to get our feasibility studies done, get maps on the wall, and we immediately were able to jump on a route that had already been kind of devised to work our way up 52. And because that route was all on secured easements, we decided to pursue that route first, as opposed to the Dexter-Chelsea route. I'll get to the Dexter-Chelsea connector in a minute. But right off the bat, because of the private money we raised and the fact that the DNR and MDOT both like that corridor, MDOT especially likes transportation corridors for their pathway money, we were able to secure $2.1 million in state funding. That was a $1.8 million TAP grant, which you guys are familiar with, and then $300,000 out of the trust fund. And the money we raised, the $600,000, also allowed us to get all the feasibility work done from Dexter, starting at Parker Road, along Dexter-Chelsea Road on the Bolin corridor through Chelsea, and then on up all the way up 52 into the Lakelands Trail. So the feasibility work was all done on that within 18 months. So that was the first year and a half, and about that same time, Parks and Rec started looking more and more at what we were doing. Washtenaw County Parks and Rec's been building the border-to-border system primarily on their own for about 20 years, but there'd been no private support of that, no private involvement in that project. And they were kind of amazed at how much money we raised so early on, just out in basically the Chelsea area. So we started meeting more and more often with the Parks and Rec folks and decided to collaborate with them because the pace of the border-to-border construction was going to put completion into the 2030s sometimes before they did it, if they did it all on their own. So over the course of early 2017, we formed a formal partnership with Washtenaw County Parks and Rec, and now they've adopted HWPI as their official private partner in the development of the border-to-border trail system. In that same time frame, the voters of Washtenaw County approved that millage by about 70%. That put $1.6 million a year into non-motorized transportation in the county as part of the road ballot that was from November of 16. And at the same time all that was going on, we had Karen's tragic death on Dexter-Chelsea Road. And that was a real catalyst because the family immediately decided within a few days actually of when Karen was killed in August of 16 that they wanted to devote significant time and energy and family resources into supporting the development of the border-to-border trail system. It's very ironic that the very week that she was killed on Dexter-Chelsea Road, we had feasibility work going on by a survey crew that same week along the stretch of road where she was killed. So that really added a lot of momentum to the project, especially in the Ann Arbor community. At that time, we expanded our board and hired our first full-time employee. We have an executive director now. And in the course of that first year working with Parks and Rec, we've come up with a 5-year completion plan, which would allow us to complete the entire non-motorized system within Washtenaw County by the end of 2021. And as that developed, we became a bigger and bigger part of the marketing effort of the Iron Bell Trail System because first of all, they love the Huron River Corridor, which I'll talk about in just a minute, but also the combination of county money and private initiative and the momentum that was already there. They've kind of adopted the border-to-border trail system coming right through Dexter as kind of one of the poster programs of the entire Iron Bell initiative, and that's worked well from a funding standpoint. So as of today, our private group has raised $2.7 million plus. We've had now over 700 individual donors, over 1,400 registered supporters, and our funds have helped secure $5.2 million in state grants for the border-to-border projects for 2018 and 2019 construction. And we have full-time staff and offices in place and are getting ready to kick off construction in multiple segments beginning March 5th. We break ground out north of Chelsea on that first segment, March 5th. And then we should be breaking ground east of the Metro Park, heading towards towards Zeeb Road on the next section of the Huron River Corridor later in the summer. The last permit was received on that from Amtrak a couple weeks ago. And that next segment that'll take that another 1.2 miles down the river, another 2 bridges will be in construction this summer, fall, probably opening next spring. And at that point in time, as we start construction March 5th out in Chelsea, We anticipate that we'll have the funding and the trail development work along, that there'll be continuous construction on at least 2 spots of the border-to-border trail system all across the next 4 years. That's the objective, is to have active construction at different locations continuously until the fall of 2021, which was when we hope to finish the whole system. Boosting that, as well as some major announcements in late March, we've secured a couple of large 7-figure grants that are substantial, and part of that, one component of that will be a $1 million local match that we'll work on the next year, which would turn that chunk of money, add another $1 million to that chunk of money. We'll be announcing that more as soon as that goes public in late March. So if you look at the next map, it's a variation of the overall regional one. It's the same thing as this, it just overlays the first 5 construction segments that are likely to kick off. If you look at it, Chelsea segment 1 is already getting ready to go March 5th. Number 2 is the next section coming out of Delhi down to Zeeb Road. As I said, the last permit, that's all funded, it's all permitted. That's just getting ready to go out to bid. So that 1.2 miles will stretch the Dexter Huron corridor out to about 2.5 miles and get it out to Zeeb Road where it'll be much more visible. We're working on the next 1.8 or 1.8 miles to move that down towards closer and closer to Maple. We haven't decided on the segment length there, some of that will depend on the engineering work that's underway. But then we've also getting closer to being able to build the first 2.1 miles of the Dexter-Chelsea corridor, starting at Freer and coming to approximately the railroad crossing. So we're getting close on all the details of that one. We're also ready to go in terms of from Green Lake, because the segment north of Chelsea will run up to Green Lake Campground, and there'll be a gravel spur into the mountain bike trail system. There's a big mountain bike trail system being built in the Waterloo Recreation Area that's already become a regional draw. The paved path, the border-to-border paved path that runs through it will have a gravel connector over to that. But we've also got funding and permitting to carry that trail further up to Territorial Road, which puts us within 3 miles of the county line. So we expect to build that section from Green Lake up to Territorial late this year or early in 2019. We're just waiting on an easement issue to clear there. And then we're also gearing up with the city of Ann Arbor to do the first 0.6 of a mile coming from underneath 23 across the Barton Nature Preserve area over to Barton Dam. That's a fairly easy 0.7 of a mile that we think can get built probably early next spring. And those are the 5 things that are in the queue and are, at various stages of preparation for build. And then beyond that, there's 6 more segments to complete the system, and we're gradually penciling those in into 2019 and 2020 and 2021. So it's going to be quite a blitz of production of activity, and we expect the profile of the border-to-border trail system to become more and more prominent as more of it gets built, especially the corridor from Dexter to Ann Arbor. We've shown that to a lot of experts across the country. There'll be 7 bridges that crisscross the river at that point in time. The easements are all there. We're real fortunate that MDOT has a rail division that owns that corridor now, so we can work with state officials on that. As that segment gets built and we're standing 7 miles from running or biking or walking to the U of M campus, that corridor will probably need to be maintained year-round, because I think that'll be one of the heaviest used non-motorized trail corridors in the country. And it will no doubt might become a commuting route over the course as soon as it gets constructed. So as we get closer and closer to Ann Arbor, I think the momentum and the profile of the whole border-to-border regional trail system will increase dramatically pretty much year by year, and Dexter sits right at the center of that whole system that's developing. So this is really just an update. We're not looking for money, quite the opposite. If you go to the last slide that I provided, I think there's a lot of potential to help Dexter and to collaborate with Dexter. So starting with just helping you with development activities. Justin and I were just talking beforehand, you guys are working on a TAP grant to push the Mill River Trail around towards the cemetery and then back south. I think it's really critical. TAP scoring will be a lot better if we show direct connections into the border, or into the Iron Belt connection, which is now on Dexter-Chelsea Road. So we'd be willing to pay right now for the feasibility work to look at the 2 routes that are being discussed, either down Parker Road and into the school area, or coming up Dexter-Chelsea Road and crossing down and going over the river. I think it'd be good before your TAP application goes in the spring to get that feasibility work underway, and maybe even with a little luck, get both those maps included in the submission. And it's also very possible that we could kick some private dollars into that TAP application, because we found early on that the less you ask for, the higher your likelihood of getting approved, and also the more types of mix and matching of different sources of funding, the higher your score. I think we were talking, Justin and I were talking about, you're looking like a 60% of construction cost submission structure to the 1.1 app. That might be stronger to ask for 50, and we could kick some money into that. And the fact that we've got quite a bit of profile now as an active private group, I think would also strengthen the scoring of your TAP grant and allow you to spread your money a little bit further. So I mean, there's a whole bunch of that kind of stuff. We've got pretty good expertise on staff. We want to have a really top-notch wayfinding system. I still see when I'm in Dexter, because I ride the trail all the time, people are wandering around trying to find that new segment out by the cider mill. So I think we can provide expertise and funding support for more aggressive signage and wayfinding around town. Direct funding, I think we can support you with direct private funding. We haven't done any fundraising in Dexter. Most of the first 600 we raised was in Chelsea, but we found a very receptive business community in Chelsea, and there's no trails in and out of Chelsea yet. I think at Dexter we could help, because you guys can't ask for private donations, but we can. We've got a good scheme of how we do that successfully to pull donors in and let donors feel a sense of ownership and involvement in the project. So I think we could raise a fair amount of private money to help the work that you guys are already doing, that you plan to do, to make sure that your entire non-motorized plan comes off the drawing board sooner rather than later. Because I think you're gonna have a flood of traffic as this thing gets built out, especially once we kind of open the floodgates where you can get from here to Ann Arbor, entirely on a non-motorized pathway. And then, as I mentioned already, I think matching funds are a big element of scoring in both trust fund and TAP grants. So I think that's something we could help you with if you're going to need to do a couple more, or even with the one you're preparing to do later this spring. I think that's something we should talk about, and that we can help you on that side as well. That's about 10 minutes, maybe
Right.
11 or 12.
Can I ask some questions?
Huh?
May I ask a few questions?
Absolutely.
I noticed on the, let's start with the alignment study in progress, specifically from Lima Center into the city of Dexter. Are you guys able to iron out that Boland right away with, last I heard it was the road commission and you guys
It's
and all the
pretty-
property owners, so.
Yeah, it's pretty well settled down. The county had 2 different legal opinions.
Right.
And we had 2 others. And the county owns the Boland property.
Correct.
There were concerns about, or there was some ideas of the Boland rights had reverted back, but the state of Michigan addressed those old reverter rights with what's called Public Act 13 in 1968. But if those reversion rights, because Boland was always a piece of property, it was never an easement. 22 landowners in 1903 all signed over 2 rods with the property across the north edge to connect that all together, and none of them reverted. So once the statute was passed in 1968, it said that if the property had not actually been reattached, that those reverter clauses were null and void. But the issue in the center part of the whole corridor began at about Dancer Road through Boulder Ridge. It's just too tight in there. So we're already working on some other options to either go up along the railroad track in the middle. We're not going to try and build the pathway in that middle mile and a half. From Freer to the crossing, and then from Wiley in, you don't have anywhere near, Boland doesn't intrude nearly as much. There's just a couple houses then where you're anywhere close to it. So we're gonna avoid squeezing it in that center section. If we can't get a separate alignment for that 1.5 miles, there's a lot of room, especially on the north side of the road easement, just to put in an expanded shoulder. You could put a 6 or 8 foot shoulder with a curb or something like that. Because the whole point of this is not to inconvenience or alienate neighbors. I mean, there's plenty of options as to fall back and just improve a shoulder for a half mile or a mile. If you look around the state where there are really dynamic regional transportation systems, everybody's got that problem. You can't always squeeze a pathway in. And when you can't, you do the next best thing to get people off the roads and to improve the safety of it. And then you put the path where a path fits.
I'm just glad that was resolved, because there was a lot of questions left. I haven't updated myself in 6
Yeah.
months on that.
Yeah, because that's been a 117-year story, so there's
Correct.
all sorts of misconceptions
Well,
about
one
what it
person
was.
says this, title says this, one person
Yeah,
says
and
this.
it
says
always
this.
was, everybody thought it was an easement, and it was never an easement, it was always a piece of which was very unusual for those interurban lines, usually they were easements, but in this case, William Boland just, must have been on horseback, just went up and down that
I
road,
reckon
got
so.
everybody to sign it over in 1903, and nobody's paid taxes on it, it's been separate property ever since then, it went to the state in the 30s, and from the state to the county in the 60s, and the county's owned it ever since then.
Yeah, didn't the road commission own it, or?
Road Commission got it from the State Road Commission in 1967. And then they've negotiated on it like 10 times.
Right.
That whole development there at Boulder Ridge, they widened it there in order to accommodate that plotting of that subdivision. So Boland, for the county, has been a known quantity for a while, but if you live next to it, until something comes up, you don't know that it's there. Along Dexter Chelsea Road, east of Wiley, in that case, in a lot of cases, the property owners on the south own land to the north of the road center line,
Right.
and then there's the Boland. So that whole section's a real conundrum of how that lays out. And I know that because my son owns along that strip of land, and he's actually got his south neighbor owns like 10 feet of property on his side of the road,
Oh, yeah,
and
the
then the
road.
Boland's there.
Right.
So we'll probably do that, get that surveyed, that section surveyed this spring, just so we can show the landowners where it's at. And there's a lot of room to just keep it up close to the road in that whole mile from Wiley, 1.2 miles, so up to Parker. We're only gonna work till Parker, and then we're gonna defer to the city as to where you wanna go in. That's where I think a feasibility study from Parker into your inner city system, the sooner we do that, the better, and we'll pay for it. It's probably $8,000-10,000, but we'll pay for that. And I think it'd be good to have that in your TAP application this spring.
Oh, yeah, I'm all about money.
Have you talked to SIO about that?
About what? About where you'll connect?
Well, no, but the city doesn't quite get to Parker.
I know, we just stopped there because we knew that it's either gonna go south or it's gonna go east, and we didn't wanna, we've done our feasibility work to Parker, not thinking the trail's gonna stop there, but then we thought at that point in time, we need to defer to you guys, and probably to you guys, and then whatever the township's role in that would be. Because it needs to connect to your inner city system,
Understood.
so.
Yeah, I just don't want to skip the middle, so to speak. What's that?
Is a little farther.
Yeah.
It's probably a half mile.
Yeah, they're
Yeah,
pretty,
it's
they're
a
pretty
triangle.
they're pretty pro pathway, so I think
Yeah.
whatever you guys wanna do, they'll probably accommodate.
I was concerned, I was just, not concerned, I was just looking at from Lakeland and Pinckney down to the Hudson Mills. How do you guys intend to go through in between, Big Portage, Little Portage there? with
Well,
such
this
a
is no
skinny
longer
roadway?
Iron Bell here. So the Iron Bell now goes this way. I think this is on hold. I think that'll
Okay.
eventually get done, but it's not easy to do. There was a feasibility study done, and anywhere you go from Territorial North, it's $8-10 million.
Well, you
And
get
there
Big
isn't a
Mountain,
clear easement.
two legs.
McGregor Road's too tight. It's probably better to use U of M property and go this way, but then Pinckney won't like that. So there's 5 townships, 2 counties. Livingston County doesn't even have a Parks Commission.
Mhm.
So there's no real clear way to get this done. And more than likely, this will have to get done with money out of Washington County.
Okay.
But if the rest of this all gets built, this is already in place, the temptation or the public momentum to close that and somehow connect that will be stronger. Because then you would have this long looping
Right.
trail system where you could stay off the road to do.
Well, that was one of the major selling points for me, was being able to connect Pinckney with Dexter.
Yeah, our approach is to build what can be built.
Right.
There's a lot of challenges in getting that done, including the lower population density, the lack of money, availability.
Well, you go through a lot of moraines over there too, there's a huge mountain.
So this can all get built, and
Right.
That's why the DNR's kind of changed their Iron Belt recognition to be this corridor, not this one.
Did you get any kickback about all these bridges you're putting across the river?
No, it's a very time-consuming and multiple agency permitting process, but no.
I've always
the
heard
bridge
it's very
design-
difficult to put a bridge across the Huron
I
River.
haven't found that. You've got to comply with all the regulations, it's very expensive. Each of the bridges is about $1 million. They have to have a certain look to them and so forth, but no, in general terms, we work closely with the Watershed Council and the DNR and the feds. I mean, that whole corridor is very expensive.
So it's always been part of the Natural Rivers Act there, but the Natural Rivers Act allows you to put bridges across where there are contiguous bridges right now. So it would be a bridge that would be contiguous to already a crossing, a railroad crossing, or a road crossing already. And the exceptions were when we allowed the one there that came across the river, and the DNR made that approval across the river there at Dexter Huron, because it was too close to the railroad track to not be able to do that. It has to also come out of Dexter Huron as well, okay? And so that's the second one, and I think that's Karen McKeechee.
Yeah, so there'll
Memorial,
be two
and then it's the
bridges,
next
this
one.
bridge is in, and then these are the two that'll go in
Right.
later this year. And then go from there. Another nice thing about the bridges that'll be, I think, a big draw is that each of those bridges is gonna have a slightly different design. We're calling it the Heritage Bridge Program, and we're seeking $1 million sponsors who will not so much sponsor the bridges, but help us design each bridge to tell a different cultural story about the area. And 3 of the 7 bridges already have sponsors, and some of that will be announced in the spring. But the first one is what Paul referenced, is that the McKeechee gift. Karen's parents donated $1 million to HWPI for the project. And in exchange for that, well, that gift we recognized on the bridge that'll go up this fall. And that's going to be designed to tell the story of the Title IX movement. And there's 6 women in Ann Arbor and in Michigan who are really pioneering efforts to helping Title IX come to be at U of M and at Michigan State. So that bridge will have a design that kind of reflects that theme. And then in each case, there'll be a small informational kiosk that you pull off the trail as you approach the bridge, where you can stop and see images or read stories about that particular case. And then the bridge will have a slightly different design that resembles that. And then there'll be other themes like that. Huron River, for example, Huron River was a big water leg of the Underground Railroads. So that may be a theme where one of the bridges is designed to tell the story that the Huron River played in the Underground Railroad. There's discussion that one theme might be to look at the role that the University of Michigan played in the early stages of the space program. So that's one of the themes that a sponsor may choose to support. And each of those 7 bridges will tell a different story like that, between the design of the bridge and the informational kiosk or seating area or whatever that you approach the bridge. So we think that people will come to this area just to travel down the river and visit each of the bridges. So that's part of the strategy, is to make it kind of a placemaking thing where, middle schools will come and do field trips down the Huron River and go see Bridge 6 or whatever the purpose of their visit is. That's a big part of this whole effort, is to make sure those bridges are something special, in addition to just how beautiful they're going to be, that they're also adding to.
This is the first time I've seen 6, 7 of them.
Yeah.
Have you guys discussed perhaps attaching off of Dexter Chelsea and trying to put a bridge across our pond or our river to attach to our current trail?
We're doing the same thing in the city of Chelsea. We're just going to try and help each city with their non-motorized plans. We're not attempting to design it or ask you to do things or whatever. It's whatever fits within your non-motorized plan. So we'll help you pay for it and help you build any way we can, but we're not attempting to do any planning within either city. So.
Yeah, I don't know if that came as somebody kicked that around or what.
Wasn't discussed, no.
And as you may or may not know, with our parks and the great desire for people to use our parks, we have a parking situation where people will use the trail, but they will park where it's most convenient for them, but inconvenient for others. Will there be places to park along this trail to encourage exiting and entering the trail?
Within the city of Dexter, I wouldn't even begin to speculate on that. That's up to you guys.
No,
But
I'm
there
talking
are-
about
there are-
everywhere
If you
else.
look at this, there's parks all along
Okay.
this, because it's either out north of Chelsea, it's the recreation areas, huge recreation areas. That's why the DNR's been so supportive. So there's parking on the north side of Chelsea, mountain bike trail systems causing new parking. There'll be another new parking lot going in up in Waterloo Recreation Area this spring. We'll probably do something along this corridor, not sure
Okay.
yet. But all along, you got the metro parks with parking lots at Barton Dam, you got, so there's already quite a few parks that have got parking lots on it.
I agree, but will you sign them to direct people there, or?
I think that'd be the important thing about signage, is when you come up, approaching the cider mill here, you'd want to be pointed towards the downtown, you want to point to the restaurants or whatever. So we want to study, and we're going to pay for studies to see what are the best practices across the country for really effective they call it wayfinding, the trail people call it wayfinding systems, so that wherever you're on the trail, you know how to get to places that we want you to get to, and they know how to get to the business districts, the facilities, the trailheads, and so forth. Parking, we're not in the parking business, we'll leave that to civic planners, the cities, the county, all that kind of stuff. We're just trying to build trail. And if that creates a problem for you guys on parking, I would think that's a good thing, and you'll figure it out.
Well, I guess it depends on your point of view. Yeah, we were talking about perhaps designating parking for the trail specifically.
Mhm.
I don't know how enforceable that is. That's a whole different discussion. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Zach?
I have much fewer questions.
Sorry, Ben.
Aside from working out the wayfinding, which I believe we've been trying to get sorted out for a while, what are some things that the city can do to attract and support users of the system?
What are some things that the city can
Parking.
do? I don't know, that's kind of off, that's not my area of expertise.
Okay. Like restrooms, the pump stations, anything?
Yeah, I think all those, whatever makes it more attractive. I mean, the wayfinding, we hear about the wayfinding all the time, is it? And you look across the state, some of them do really well with it, and some of the newer systems have virtually none. And I know why they don't have any is because TAP won't fund it, and trust fund will fund it a little bit, but most of these communities get the trail built, and they don't address maintenance, and they don't have any money left over for wayfinding. You can't really borrow from TAP or from MDOT for signage. They will pay for aggregate and grading and asphalt, because they're road builders, but they won't pay for signage, and they leave it up to us to address maintenance. So we want to make sure that we have a good study as to what's good systems for wayfinding, support the local governments that own it. And then the maintenance plan is a big issue. You hear a lot about that. If new trail goes in year 3, you've already got roots buckling through the pavement and nothing gets fixed, they can deteriorate pretty quickly over the first several years. So our plan of maintenance is to build out a private-public partnership through a permanent endowment. And we're already setting that up where we're going to put $20,000 per year of city money into a maintenance endowment. And the maintenance endowment will then be privately administered, reimbursing governmental units along the participating trail to maintain certain maintenance levels. And if they don't, say you have a township that just isn't able to fulfill their commitments, then the private group could use that portion of the endowment funding for that year to hire the maintenance out privately. So we've seen this in other parts of the state. When you have a privately funded maintenance endowment, it really evens out trail maintenance when various townships or counties or cities have budget restrictions or budget problems and they stop maintaining trail. That way you can make sure that even if a trail crosses your multiple jurisdictions, you can make sure the trail maintenance is continued. So the $20,000 per mile, we're actually gonna start seeding that fund this year. And by the time we get it all built out, there'll be about $400,000 in there. And then I think that'll be a big fundraising drive in 21 or 22 is to make sure that there's we're targeting a couple $1 million in a permanent maintenance endowment that would be used to support the trail in Washtenaw County. We're lucky in Washtenaw County because we have a very well-funded park system, and they'll probably end up actually doing most of the maintenance. There's already discussion that they'll add some equipment and add some staff as they take on more and more of the trail. But we want to supplement that with a private fund, and that seems to be the best practices across the country. If you really want it to be in good shape on day 1 and on day 1 of year 10, then you need to anticipate the maintenance. And that's what we intend to do with this endowment fund.
It's well thought out.
Other questions? So I'm not an economic development person, so there's
Put it to your
answers to those
executive director.
questions, but that's not my deal. So Parks and Rec will get better and better at that over time. And there's a lot of things, the public-private thing is an interesting thing, a lot of things we can do privately that they just can't do. If you think about like this river section, I like telling this story, is that bridge went in there, 3 years ago? And they had to sling that thing over the top of the tree lines and drop it down onto the river. That should have been a big deal. That should have been, photo ops and ceremonies and all that. Parks and Rec doesn't have any pictures of that. They have no video of that. I've not been able to find any pictures of that. When these new bridges come in, we're gonna make sure that all our sponsors.
They need to be there again.
Yeah, we're gonna make sure all our sponsors know about that.
Took when they built Dexter.
Yeah, it's gonna be a little bit of a party. We're gonna make sure the public gets involved in that. And so that's something where the Parks and Rec, they're not marketing folks. And I think we can be a little bit more rah-rah, kind of thing supporting that. because it'll help build overall awareness and utilization as the trail system gets built. Anything else?
No question?
Thank you.
Great update, Jeff. Thanks for your work on that.
Thanks for your time.
Okay, we are at approval of the agenda. I don't believe there's anything new on the table. Is that correct? Okay.
I move we approve the agenda as presented.
Moved by Fisher, second by Smith. Thank you both. Oh. Any discussion on the agenda? All those in favor of approving the agenda, signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, motion carries. We have no public hearings this evening, so we're down to non-arranged participation. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on to communications. There were 4 of them in the packet. Our upcoming meeting list, the signed calendar, the Comcast press release on the internet speed, and our coming annual letter. Comments or discussion? Okay, I'll keep it moving. We're down to reports. First report tonight is from our superintendent. Dan, how are you?
Good evening, council. Provided a
Good evening.
report in your packet, and after questions, I have 3 updates on the water, wastewater, and Department of Public Works. We can start with any questions on my report.
Donna?
I don't have a question for you, but I was really impressed with snow removal. Truly impressed. And you guys even had the mailboxes dug out by the next morning, so tell everybody thank you.
Thank you. Well, that was gonna be my first comment on the DPW.
Oh, well, sorry to butt in there, Dan.
We've had, I think, eight different snow days the last 12 days. They've been working a lot. And the last one's always, I guess, gotta be the best. I mean, we got somewhere around a foot of snow over the past, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They put a lot of hours in. We ended up with one of our water operators, who used to be a DPW guy, helping out with that. I think the guys did a really good job.
Yeah.
They worked, very dedicated. I'll let them know, the council.
Well, they even smile and wave.
Right. I don't know, you should have seen Kurt today. He was.
Not waving today?
He was still happy, Kurt, but he wasn't smiling a whole lot. We did have one of our snow trucks go down Friday. So we've got that at the shop right now, waiting for an estimate. Something to do with the rear end is what we think. So hopefully by next council meeting, I can update you on where we're at with that. Number 1 well, we've been working on the last week and a half or so. Today they put the new PVC pipe in. So we're hoping tomorrow, or Wednesday and Thursday, we'll do our back T samples on it. Hopefully by Friday, we'll get that up and running again. One of our wastewater operators is going to be retiring here Friday, Rick Shabbat. And I wanted to thank Courtney and then also council with the transition from going from Rick to Brad Dexter. We've had about 10 weeks. Usually what we do is somebody will leave, retire, or whatever, and then we just hire somebody. So we're 1 person short. This time we had Rick and all the rest of the guys along with Brad for 10 weeks, and this has been the easiest transition we've had. I mean, he's up to speed, he's ready to go. I mean, obviously there's a lot more things he needs to do, but the things that we need him to do right now and feel confident in was very successful, and I really appreciate that. And hopefully in the future, if we have to do it, we'll be able to do it the same way. Rick's got our new guy told him today, Brad, I said, you got some big shoes to fill. I mean, this guy was here 2.5 years. He got a deep wastewater, S5, S4 treatment, S5, S4 in water also. One of the things that we finished up was, I don't know if everybody remembers, we had the GO2 bags now at the wastewater plant. During the construction, we'd use those instead of the digesters. Well, the lowest quote we got on that was $25,000 to remove it. Well, we've been able to do it over 2 budget years, and it costs us a little over $6,000 to remove that bag, which is a huge saving for the wastewater plant. Have any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up is our Community Development Manager. Michelle, how are you?
I'm fine. How's council tonight? Well, short of you being ill, Sean, is everyone else feeling better?
Cough.
You're tough, is that what you said?
No, I just have a cough, yeah.
You have a cough, okay. All right, you have my report in front of you, and before I go into my updates, do you have any questions?
Questions on the report?
I have a stop, I gotta think about what I started.
Okay.
Oh. Has there been any plans at all discussed, I see, and this is your meeting review section, page 24, Michelle, about the A.R. Brower potential development of the redevelopment of the WISD office and the 2 houses on Central Street there.
That's what this is. We met, Courtney and I met with Allison. She presented a very conceptual plan. We asked her some questions, everything from, we informed her that City Council has had a discussion that could possibly be a site for city offices. That's not necessarily the direction we're going, but that was a discussion, I understand, with council. We talked about the potential of working possibly with Coley O'Brien, now that he owns Terry B's, maybe doing some sort of cross-access circulation easement to improve circulation for both properties. Because the design that Ms. Bishop brought in showed retail right along Main Street right there at Baker, but there'd be no place for people to park, and the access would have to come from off in Central or the alley. Retail wouldn't have a shot in.
It sounds like a good way to have empty retail.
You'd probably have empty retail. You'd have no, so.
Could affect the hospital, too.
Plus, the design showed a few townhomes fronting right onto the park. That may work. I don't know. I just think that there's definitely some room to have conversation about how to improve the design and layout so that it's more pedestrian focused and less automobile focused. And right now, the design is very automobile focused.
Could you tell me, was there any discussion of a timing schedule with any of this, or are you too not far along?
She said that this was very, 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 very early stages. That it's not like, she did not give, unless I misunderstood, Courtney, correct me, that this is coming in anytime soon. But to go back to the ISD and the fact that I think Zach, you brought this up at least one meeting last year. If that's a place that council wants to have offices, now would be the time to start talking to the property owner.
I'll remind you that there's been many places that we've talked about offices.
Absolutely, I understand that. I'm just
I'm
pointing out the
all over the
obvious. That's my job. Any other, is that all, Paul? Do you have any other questions on it?
Oh, that was my start. Thank you.
Anyone else with questions? Okay, so let's start with the 3045 Broad Street Committee. They met just prior to council's work session today. It was very productive. Excuse me. They presented what their community forum was. It was sort of a recap of what the structure of their meeting was, what they were hoping to elicit, or the topics they brought up that would elicit feedback from the public. It was very good. Many of you, if not all of you, if I remember right, were there. And you saw there was a good deal of turnout. There was a lot of conversation. They also had a second board that was what we heard. So take the structure, then what they heard, and then they had a few additional boards that informed, how best to put it, site analysis, basically. Not anything set in stone right now, but sort of to give us an understanding of how, of the critical factors, I think, as Richard has said. So the location of Broad Street is a critical component. The power lines, where they actually end up being, on Broad as well as across the creek and the site. Retail zones, where those actually end up. And then the pedestrian experience and how that connection to downtown is maintained and expanded with this redevelopment. We talked about the next community workshop, and they're going to present 3 to 4 site analyses along with the same information we saw, their framework, what they heard, the different site analyses. And there's not going to be any building topology yet. It's just going to be an explanation of this is what we heard, this is how we see it laying out, this is how it could work, this is why it might not be the best idea to do it this way, so let's look at this one. So I know it's hard to follow that without having some visuals in front of you, but stay tuned because we are going to be scheduling the next community forum. That will probably be the week of February 26th, either the 27th or 28th, Tuesday or Wednesday. And then right after that, we're going to schedule the next workshop, which is the massing and density. That's where we're going to start to really get into some typologies and something a little more, some more visual clues as to what it could look like, what a product might look like. That we're looking at the week of March 12th. In between those two community forums, we'll have another 3045 Broad Street Committee, and then workshop 4, which would be the last one, that will be the concept designs and recommendations from the Norfolk team. Again, in between the 3rd and 4th meeting with the community, the 3045 Broad Street Committee will meet, make sure everything's moving smoothly, get the feedback that the Norfolk team needs. We get the information we need before it actually goes out to the public. And this thing is moving along quite nicely. Do you have any questions for me on that before I go into my last update? Okay.
I guess my only comment is that if you said the 27th to 28th, that's 2 weeks away. I certainly hope we can get out the information to the public as fast as we possibly can. If that's the actually date that you're talking about, because it's only 2 weeks away.
Yes, that's exactly why we did it at least 2 weeks out, is so that we do have enough time to market and get the communication out to the community. We should know by tomorrow where the venue is, and that will help to inform the exact date and help us to get the message out. The last update involves Encore Theater. I received a call from Dan Cooney on Friday of last week, and we were able to connect today. He was actually following up on the meeting that Sean and he had, and I think Sean has that in his memo. He wanted to know when it might be a good time for him to come in and talk to City Council about Encore's plans. And although I can't give him a date yet, and you guys will talk about that when Sean does his update, he wanted to, one of the things that I was not clear about was exactly what it is that Encore is looking for from the city. And he was very clear today. They're looking for the city to give them some property or a piece of property that they can then build their new theater. That comes out of some of the discussion that they had with our economic development consultant. So I think there's some pieces of communication that we're all kind of missing. So I think at some point when we hear exactly what Encore wants to do, when they finally figured out what they want to do and what they need, that will help us, you, to figure out how the city helps them and what are the ways that we can do that. So that's all of my stuff for right now, unless anyone.
Just to cover that, Dan called me 2.5 weeks ago, right after our last meeting. And I didn't meet with him in person. He rang my cell phone and we talked for probably 20 minutes. And he wanted to, if you remember my previous mayor report, I had mentioned that I'd been invited by Kevin Kolb and Larry Zahn and Carl Fink to talk about the Encore. They wanted to make sure that I was aware they're looking to do something. Everybody seems to be aware that the Encore wants to do something, but there's no unified speaker. They speak in mass or whatever. And so I told Dan, I said, if you want to tell your story, you know, you can either come to a council meeting or maybe even council wants to hear, I don't know, for half an hour at our goal setting or something. I don't know what might be, when you want to do this. But I invited him to, you know, I think they're important in the community. And I said, if you want to come, it's easier on the weekend, maybe we could do it at one of our workshops. So that was what I offered to him. You know, they're looking to do something. Their biggest question is, do they do it at the site that they're at, or do they do it elsewhere? The downside of doing it at the site that they're at is they can't do productions for a year or so while they renovate that space into whatever it would be, whether it's up, out, you know, down, whatever. You know, they've got options on that site. They just can't produce and have the shows going on at the same time as on that site. They're interested in being closer to the park. Obviously, that's the property that we're talking about, 3045 Broad. Hence, I suggested that, you know, if he's got a story to tell or a question to ask, he should ask it to all of council. So if there's any interest in scheduling that, you know, we can invite him to a meeting, we can invite him to a goal setting for half an hour. There's multiple ways to do it. We have the.
I think we should invite him to a meeting.
Okay.
Anytime.
Okay.
Training, or
Could be anything.
prior, or a workshop prior to.
You know, I didn't know how much time people would want to hear the story. I mean, it took him more than 10 minutes to tell me the story.
It will take more time.
You know, I mean,
Okay.
I mean, tonight's presentation took, you know, 40 minutes.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, so I mean, with some dialogue back and forth.
Okay,
And we know Ray's got at least 8 questions,
maybe 9.
maybe 9.
Maybe 20.
So I was just thinking that you get out of a timed element or out of another programmed thing necessarily, but.
So they have
That's
no
all.
written outline?
Well, that's, I mean, they're just fishing right now is all that's going on. I mean, not in a bad way, but, you know, if they're trying to ask a question, you know, somebody talking to Paul and somebody talking to Jim and somebody talking to me, that doesn't get it done. I mean, that isn't.
And they've done, I don't know about Jim, but they have talked to Paul.
Right, so, I mean, it's, you know, all I'm just trying to put it out there in front. If it's worth working towards, I'm worth working, you know, towards it, whatever it is. I just don't know what it is they need, you know. I did tell them that, you know, I didn't think that council wanted to give property away necessarily. I said, but I'm, you know, only guessing. I said, I haven't taken a vote on that. I said, you know, if you want property over there, maybe the Broad Street property becomes ours. And then he got into, oh, well, there's a value to that. And I'm like, well, hey, wait a minute, you know, there's no free lunch, Dan. I'm just telling you I was talking here, you know, I mean, we're trying to make something out of nothing too over there.
Right.
Well, it's true, right?
You're absolutely
Right, I mean, you know, so.
We got a few warts on that
Yeah,
space.
so anyway, I just thought that, I was glad he called, and so that's my summary of the story.
We will probably have to help them be structured. Like Sean said, you're getting from multiple people at different times. And I think being consistent with our message will help them know what they have to provide to us and help them organize their train of thought and their presentation.
Well, and, you know, their, part of their story is, you know, they're our destination, right? Obviously, they draw people from all around, outside the community, inside the community. 6 months out of the year, and there's also a benefit when they're just in production or when they're practicing, you know, there's people living and working here, and they're in the community, so, you know, what impact is there if they're not doing that for a year? You know, does that mean the town shuts down? I don't think so, but anyway, he's got a story to tell, and it seems like it's being told, like I said, kind of, I was trying to redirect it, was all. Thought we'd all be interested in hearing the same thing,
I think that's a good idea.
so. But if you would rather have it be at a meeting, I mean, I could tell them council preference is to hear it on a Monday. We just have to, I'd like to then allow a longer period of time, acknowledging that's gonna take some time to do. Otherwise, I was thinking we
It could
could.
be structured in terms of the time.
Well, that's why I was thinking as part of the goal setting, you could do like the last hour or the first hour or the first 40 minutes, or, you know, you could tell them, you know.
Whatever.
Have you set your goal setting date yet?
There's a couple of suggestions on dates in my report, for either the February 24th or the 3rd of March. I think those were the dates that worked for everybody, if I remember.
On my calendar.
Not here.
Okay.
Because one of the things that, I'm sorry.
I can live with either one, I know we can meet at 6 o'clock again for a meeting, if that, an hour will work, I don't have any problem with that, or we could meet at the goal center, you know, but you're absolutely right, they need to make their story concise, and they need to present it, and they need to understand realities as well, okay? So,
It sounds like they may benefit from having to have a more structured and timed,
That's what I was thinking.
instead of an hour to ramble.
whatever. We can probably narrow them down in their rambling if we give them some structure.
No. Doesn't Carl think one of the people approached us?
Yeah.
They need to elect a committee and they have a chair, and
They-
I don't wanna sit here.
They have a committee.
I know, I don't wanna sit here and
He's on the board.
go yes, no, yes, no. I mean, I don't wanna tell them how to do anything, you know, it's not my place to tell them.
So let me flip this. Would you like a subcommittee of the council to meet with Dan? Maybe the ED committee or another one of your committees? Would a smaller group might be?
My preference would be at the first workshop, that he comes in at 9 o'clock, and we tell him by 9, whatever, you guys pick the time, that we're dedicating the first 40 minutes of our 2.5 to 3 hours, and we're usually done by noon. That's my preference. And we just tell them up front, you got, you know, we're dedicated this amount of time, you can, 20 minutes to tell a story, 20 minutes for questions, and then
What was the date in March?
Third.
February 24th would be the date if Donna can't make the 3rd.
Oh, she can make it.
FYI, I'm out of town on the 24th.
Okay.
I guess if it's on to be the 3rd, I would just request it be at 9:30, since that's when the forum goes from 8:30 to 9:30 on the 1st and the 3rd.
I don't cater to that meeting.
I know you don't. You don't even show up.
I would think the 24th, I mean, because it'll be a little bit, but it will be specific financial goals and objectives most likely.
Yeah, somebody will have to do that though. I'm usually the one that keeps track of those,
Yeah.
so somebody will have to do that.
So the 24th? And have him come from 9 to 9:20?
I'd say we give him 40 minutes.
40 minutes.
I was gonna call him back and ask him how long he needed, but if you'll do that, that's great.
Right, I promised him I would call him first thing in the morning. Because if he was gonna have to come on the 24th, he wanted to make sure he's got it done.
I don't know if you can direct them to be more specific in their desires or what they're expecting from us, or?
I think I can find a way to talk with him in the language he'll understand.
Perhaps give us a
I think I'll have to tell him he's
program,
gotta write a
what's going
script.
on.
and make sure that there's dialogue that explains what it is.
Well, just,
Maybe
the
that
general
will-
process instead
Yes.
of zigzagging all over.
But yeah, we can do, I'm sure he can do costumes if that's needed, maybe not on the first meeting, maybe the second.
I think we can be fine, let's just,
It'll work.
I'm just-
It'll work. The very last update, it just hit me. Don Darnell sold his building on Ann Arbor Street, and he will be moving his offices and a couple other offices in that building to his 8080 Grant site. Excuse me, so there's been a couple of buildings sold on Ann Arbor Street within the last 30 days. One was his and the other was 7910 Ann Arbor Street, Kevin Cole's old building.
Oh, they sold
So,
He just sold
and that
it.
one's going to have new tenants, and Don will certainly have new tenants in his old building also, so.
Can we ask what Don's building is gonna be? Was it bought by anybody that we know?
No, I don't know who bought it. It's just like an LLC, which
Gotcha,
I don't know who that is yet, but we'll find out. John?
oh, sorry, Jim, go ahead.
Go back to your report there, in the last item, the enforcement.
Yes, sir.
You said you needed feedback.
Yes, thank you, yes. On the snow removal, is council interested in giving staff the leeway to do some research on streamlining it? And
Sure.
maybe reducing the time frame from 48 hours to 24?
Yes.
Would you entertain the possibility of
Yes.
an amendment?
Has there been an increase in the complaints, or?
It was this particular one. The only other complaint that I've gotten recently on the sidewalks was somebody not understanding why he had to shovel his walk when his sidewalk doesn't connect to anything else. So,
I mean, I sent 85 reminder notices last week because of people not complying with it, and that was from basically Sunday's snow when Dan and I drove around Thursday morning.
But that's all the follow-up with the same point, right?
correct.
I mean,
Right, the
there's been
85 I
there's been
drove
there's been
around.
one complaint, then they went out, looked to see about the,
Right.
But I don't think year to year you don't get too many complaints, do you?
For people not clearing their, from people not clearing their snow, or people who got a notice? I just wanna make sure I know what question you're asking.
No, just in general, people complaining.
Well, I mean, we've had other complaints, about other areas of the
Right.
city.
Yeah, people do
Probably
complain about the
another 5.
sidewalks
Yeah.
in different places all the time. Whether it's a ramp like out at La Fontaine and Bushes and Dexter Crossing, that's a regular one. Because they'll clear their sidewalks, say a company can do it, and then we clear the streets and then it blocks it. And so we have to remind them to go out and clear those out, because you get a lot of runners. You get a lot of walkers, people with strollers, I hear that a lot. So if things like ramps aren't clear, or there's a section of long sidewalk that's not cleared, that we get a call or we get an email.
But throw some spaghetti on the wall, 48 hours is very, very generous. I think the Manchester approach is pretty good, but I think it's too long, 3 notices before anything really happens.
Mhm.
So it ought to be respectful of people's abilities to clean their sidewalk, and it shouldn't place too much extra burden on staff to have to pull people's sleeves that many times. I also liked, I forget what the comment was, of trying to work with community groups, so if there's an old lady who can't clean it.
And we do have that in our ordinance, that if somebody needs I'll call it a hardship exemption, that's not the term, but we offer that ability to find a way for the city to go out and take care of it.
I also think that would have been difficult the last 5 days to determine when the snowfall started and when it ended. 'Cause people,
You're right.
yeah, it was continuous for a while. It was clean and it was not there. When I was at the Encore, or at the restaurant yesterday in the afternoon at 1 o'clock, there was a couple that was struggling to walk past the old building there, not the old, but the building where the Don Darnell is, and the one next to it that was the painted trout, okay? But by that evening, that was clear, okay? but they were struggling, very difficult couple walking down that street. They were slip and sliding away.
Well, the rules for businesses are different too.
What's that?
Businesses only have like 4 hours or
Yeah.
start a business. But then when it's vacant, that's a little bit more.
That's part of the problem too.
Right.
And there were other spaces I noticed along there that were not seen, either that were businesses.
Some places they'll kick it in once there's 6 inches, then you have to clean it, not when, so there are other ways to.
If there's a Sunday and it's there and the business is not open on Sunday, they're gonna have a tendency not to clean it.
That's the only reason the harbor got cleaned is because there was somebody there every day.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I had also heard, I remember that there's one committee, and I don't remember the name of the committee, but they put a notice out in the before snow flies, and they identify in the paper, it's a public notification, what the ordinance requirement is. And then after that, that's the notice. If you don't clear your sidewalk, they go in and they clear it, and they put the cost
I saw that
in an invoice.
Which we do like with the snow flyer. I mean, we're literally sending the snow flyer to every resident, which reminds them they have to do it.
Mhm.
So in a way, we are doing it.
So, I mean,
It's in the handbook too.
just need to know which way.
It's in the handbook, it's in the snow flyer, it's in the email update, it's on the Facebook page, and it's on the website. I mean,
Mhm.
Courtesy and common
Right.
sense.
By and large, people do a pretty good job on sidewalks. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
Let us do a better
I
job.
mean, it would not take a whole lot of effort to figure out who the repeat offenders were if we were trying to do it. Right, I mean, it becomes a question of, do we try to enforce it?
Yes.
right.
I mean,
Well,
it's no different than parking.
You know, over and
You know,
over.
we sort of pick and choose when we do it, but when we get a complaint, we follow up.
Right, I mean, but it took
But-
over an hour for Dan and I to drive around and make a list, and we probably didn't, I mean, we covered most of them.
I know, my point is, most people don't wait 48 hours and then go and say, oh, wait a minute, I'm up against the window, and go shovel at the 47th hour. Most people are doing it, I don't know that ramping it down to 24 really sets the enforcement train moving any faster. The enforcement train can get out there.
Yeah, but you can't send them a letter till it's been 48 hours.
Well, I know.
So I mean, it doesn't do any good to do it at 24 hours if you have to go back and check again at 48 hours.
Yeah, but I know my point is that most people do it. I mean, to lower the number just for a handful is.
Okay,
I
we
don't-
can just
I-
leave
no,
it.
I- no,
We
no,
can just
there's
leave it
others,
there
there's others
because
that
we brought it
are,
up.
there's others that are interested. Well, you have to allow feedback, you ask the question.
Yeah, so that's fine if the feedback is from the neighbor,
I'm
but.
just saying that part of the enforcement is that how often do we get out there? We went out there this time and looked for 85 letters because somebody complained.
We had done some spot.
Am I missing the story?
Yeah, not exactly. His complaint was the previous snow, not this most recent one we had just this weekend.
Well, but that's what
But-
caused somebody to do something, to plan it.
Well, yes and no. We know after a major snow, we do have to go out. Probably on the smaller ones, I'm not as vigilant of it. But did the complaint
I'm
make
not
sure?
blaming, I'm just saying that
No, I see.
I'm not sure if the action fits the problem. I'm not sure if we actually have that big of a problem or not, I can't tell.
I think compared to like last year where we'd get a snow and most of the times it melted right afterwards, we didn't have near as much. This year, it's a snowier, we had a snowy December, pretty mild January, and now we've got a snowy February, so. And that's it, I don't have anything else, unless you want me to stand up here talking more.
Okay, we are down to city manager report, please.
Jim Heisler will be drilling some test wells on his property. He called me last week to tell me that. He's just looking for water, so we'll be drilling a few wells to see if they find it. Some of you may have seen that the state of Michigan, or the governor proposed increasing the tipping fee for trash to fund some some cleanup initiatives. He was proposing the change from like 30 cents a ton to $4.75 a ton. And the impact to the city would be between $17,000 and $20,000 annually. So if that were to actually happen, that would definitely require a rate increase because we cannot cover that under our current system. So we'll have to kind of watch and see if that actually goes anywhere. speaking of trash, Waste Management did ask to change our service day, so no council has any concerns about changing to Monday. They feel like it would be more consistent service because a lot of times the drivers on Friday aren't consistent where they would be on Monday, and it really makes an enormous difference if you have the same drivers picking up the trash. I can't even tell you the difference.
And one question on that was, if they go to do a switch over and the card or whatever that they were gonna mail out, it said that, when you would say, I think it mentioned March 12th, okay, as a start date for that.
Yeah.
All right, would they still pick up on the 9th?
Probably not.
The Friday?
Doubt it.
I think so, no, 'cause they need to get people in the habit of doing it on the
Right.
12th.
But their card that they want to send out doesn't tell people that.
So just to say that it won't be on the 9th, but it'll be on the 12th?
Right.
I don't know, they may be doing that. Justin, there was another piece of paper that isn't in here that came with this.
They indicated for at least a week afterwards that they would still pick up on the Friday, just to make sure that.
So I think they would probably do the 9th to 12th, potentially that next Friday, and then 1 day from there
And
on
then
out.
starting Monday.
Yeah.
But
We'll make sure that's
I
itemized on the
think the
card.
expectation is that if trash is set out on the Friday before the 9th, that they would tag it. They'll put a notice on the trash to let folks know, hey, starting this Monday, that's when we're gonna be switching over.
So we can just clarify that on the letter.
Yeah, thank you.
Paul?
I support the idea, and I think that one of the things that I think would be a benefit is because you have a leaf pickup, that it's, they wouldn't be sitting out, a lot of people put them out when they're bagging, and stick them out there and they get wet. If on a Monday, where a lot of people on the weekend do their bagging, I think it would be a lot better for the appearance of the city.
Well, it also helps us deal with problems instead of people being mad at us all weekend about trash issues. We can fix it on a Tuesday as opposed to a Saturday where we can't fix it.
There's multiple answers there, I support the concept.
What's your rationale again?
So the way that Waste Management operates, they don't, so like you work 40 hours a week, and so whenever that 40 hours is up, you go home. It's not, their overtime starts after the 40th hour. So if I work 10 hours on Monday and 10 hours on Tuesday
Yeah,
and
you
10
get
hours
it
on
overtime
Wednesday.
by Thursday noon.
Exactly, and then we have a different driver, so that's why we have these changeovers of drivers on
Oh.
Friday. So if we're on Monday, it's always gonna be the same people, with the exception of vacations and stuff. It'll be a more consistent person on Monday. And it's huge here because we have people that put trash on alleys and all kinds of things
Yeah,
that,
anywhere.
right. Really? Yeah,
Yeah,
It's-
all trash is on the alley in my block.
right. So if they, forget an alley or, it's just easier to have somebody that knows. So we'll move ahead with that then unless, anybody has an objection.
Is that the start of our calendar year, or what's the significance of March 12th?
It's just a date we picked.
They
So
actually
notify.
wanted to do it sometime in the next couple weeks, and we told them that wasn't gonna be enough time
To get the word out.
to get the word out. Their big issue is that the way that they're spread out with the communities that they're servicing, they're very loaded on Friday and not loaded on Monday. So they want to try and move some of the folks they have on Friday to Monday to smooth out their operation.
Yes, I do.
So that will give us enough time to make sure that the letters all get out and that we can get the information out. I guess that's
Yeah, I
it.
can't imagine doing.
Cool. Other questions for Courtney? Jim?
It's under G, the Ann Arbor Road resurfacing. And you said they indicated interest in possibly turning over jurisdiction of the portion of Ann Arbor Road there between the city limits and Hoyne. Is that something we would view as a good thing, or?
I mean, I don't think that it's necessary. I mean, it would allow, then the guys to be responsible for plowing that all the way through to Dexter Crossing, from Danway to Dexter Crossing. So I don't think that it would be, allow us to control it and, resurface it in the future. It is going to be resurfaced before we take it over, so.
It's still in lousy shape though.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be mill and overlaid, so that should help, but.
Yeah, it will help for a while, but it's nowhere as good a shape as our road is from Danhoe into town.
Have they made that decision? I thought some of it was crush and shape.
It is crush and shape, but they're not gonna do crush and shape on the curb part.
There's a meeting, I don't remember when it was, I was going to attend that.
Yeah, February 20th.
20th, I think.
Yeah, and council doesn't have to do it. I mean, they can request it all they want, but they can't force us into it, so.
It's all money and,
I mean, we'll get a smidgen more of Act 51, but I
but
think
we
that's-
gotta redo the whole road because it's substandard anyway.
Yeah,
I think the road bed is shot, to be honest.
I mean, I guess we could have a core taken. And see what the.
Well,
I'm not an engineer.
if we're talking, there's a lot of things you could do. You could videotape the storm sewer, I'd like to know whether that's cleaned out or not. There's a lot more to taking over just the road. I mean, what else is in the right of way?
Well, we
I
would
mean,
own it
that's
as
not a
water.
question
We
to be
would own
answered
it as
today.
water and sewer, but,
Yeah, what's our liability?
There's a water main on Bush's side, it's a dead end.
but we already own that now. That doesn't-
No, maybe there's some negotiation too, with council's interested in wanting it, maybe, the storm sewer, televised or whatever utility.
I'm just,
I think that was
just
one of the
asking what the
things.
condition would be. It'd be nice to know.
Maybe we want more than just milling them. I don't- and it's curb and gutter there, so. Can't really do a crush and shape.
Anything else? Okay. All right, so we on the matter quickly, it sounds like we're targeting the 24th. Marie's the only one that can't attend that. I'll double check with Julie, but why doesn't everybody plan on the 24th at 9? We covered the encore.
Where do you wanna have that meeting?
No problem. I'd have to see if
We'll
it's winter market or not, so I don't know. Off the top of my head.
get the location figured out. Any questions for me?
What again is the date?
February 24th?
No, winter market's on the 17th.
Okay, thank you. So it should be able to be here then.
Do we have a time?
I was planning to do 9 o'clock, 9 to noon. It's typically what
Thank you very
yeah,
much.
well, no, I know you don't want to eat, so. Okay. Do we want a consent agenda?
Yes. I move to approve the two items listed on the consent agenda. Bills and payroll on the amount of $449,957.24, and the appointments to the Parks and Rec Commission and Arts Culture Board.
Moved by Fisher, thank you, second by Smith. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you, we have no old business, so we are down to new business. We have 6 items of new business, several relating to 150 Jeffords. New business item L1 is consideration of a number of documents. 150 Jeffords PUD Development Agreement, condominium documents, and encroachment termination agreements.
I will move to approve all of those things as contained on page 56, subject to the following conditions. Conditions in the staff review dated February 8th, 2018, city attorney's review dated February 7th, 2018, and review and approval of the assignment of rights of way under the PUD agreement, declaration of restricted covenant, right-of-way vacation, and deeds for property transfer by city council.
Support.
Motion by Zach, second by Paul, thank you both. Okay, we'll return to this over to
Yep, okay. So it's been a little while since we've been here, but staff I should say myself, Courtney, and our different city attorneys have been working with the applicant, Gunther Building, to get the PUD agreement finalized as well as the condominium documents. And we've gotten to that point. The only thing that is new to you actually is the encroachment agreement. You may even remember that when the Mill Creek Terrace project, excuse me, I am so sorry, was completed, they were going to have third floor balconies, and that would extend about 4 feet basically over the sidewalk, which is, as you know, public right of way. So it'd be in the airspace. Those are your air rights. So an easement was done at that time when all of the different property transfers happened with Mill Creek Terrace. The final site plan for 150 Jeffords has balconies also, but they're on the second, third, and fourth floor. And they will also extend approximately 4 feet into the airspace over the public sidewalk on Jeffords. So the applicant's attorney drafted a new encroachment agreement, and Scott Montel, city attorney, is here today, and if you've got any questions, he can go over anything you have. He's reviewed it, he's found it acceptable, he had some minor revisions, which I've documented in my report. Then the applicant's own counsel, then our city attorney, again, Scott, did an affidavit of termination of the original encroachment agreement, because there's no need for that one anymore, so that one's done. Yes, Mr. Smith?
When you're talking about on the second, third, and fourth floor, someplace in there, I recall reading, it said something about a terrace on the first floor.
Right, the terrace is on the first floor within their footprint. They don't go out over.
Okay, that's,
Yeah, they
That's why-
butt right to that sidewalk line.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Because I thought it was mentioned with the balconies, but didn't know what it was covering.
Right, thank you.
Is that a common thing to do, to have the balconies out over the sidewalk?
On multi-story buildings like that that are built right up to the
If something
property
drops
line.
off the balconies, whose liability?
Scott, is that addressed in the encroachment agreement?
I would have to double check that. But it would be covered under the PUD agreement, I'm sorry, with the condominium documents. That would be, like, their responsibility.
Okay, so.
So we wouldn't have liability on
No.
it?
You have a question?
In
Not yet.
cartoons, plants always fall.
I know, I was just thinking about that. I had the Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote, and I had just exactly as you said that.
Yeah.
Do we need to shore up the approximately versus the
We will.
4 foot exactly?
We will, because they will have to, with that encroachment agreement, I think.
Yeah, I see it mentioned 2 different times here,
Right.
different, one's approximately and then the other one says
Right.
exactly.
I put approximate because I don't have the measurement specifically, but I
Okay.
scaled it, and even though I'm good at scaling,
Well,
those little minor numbers aren't gonna show up.
Thank you.
how high is the second floor balcony from the ground?
I'd have to go and scale it off the plan, but it's going to be, it's gonna be significantly above. Do you know how far they're gonna be?
What, what's the floor level of
The floor is 10 to 12 feet between your,
Yeah, it's about 22 feet.
no,
It'll only be 10, it's only one
Story high.
on
it'll
the
be 10,
first.
it'll
Oh,
be
you
10
said
to 12.
Oh, the
Second,
second,
third,
second
fourth.
floor, 10 floors, yeah.
Yeah. A minimal of 10. That whenever you have anything, like if it was a projecting sign that was crossing over, there has to be at least 9 feet from the bottom of the sign to the grade of the sidewalk. In this case, they're gonna have, like you said, 10 feet, at least 10 feet, it might be more than that.
And that'll be, okay, the balconies are only on 3 sides of the building? One side?
You have balconies on 3, 4 sides of the building, but only the side on Jeffords
There's one
it
back
goes
there.
across, right.
talking about the balcony, are they open or are they closed? The sides, are they solid or are they open? Like wrought iron or like that?
The wrought iron according to Natalie. So they'll be vertical,
So they are open?
and there's language in the master deed about what people can have on their balconies, you know,
Do we have the exhibits?
We have them at the office. Did you want all the exhibits for the PUD agreement? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
I can provide those to you either through Dropbox or, through Dropbox. But yes, we have all of them.
I'd just like to see the complete list of stuff I'm voting on.
Okay, so, if I'm not mistaken, it's at the end. So the exhibit list in the PUD, A is the property, B is the PUD area plan, C is parcel A, B, and C. That's to be deleted. Parcel C becomes, or parcel D becomes C, that's the road closure, temporary parking and construction staging diagram, which you saw a couple months ago. And then E becomes D, and that's the calculation of tap fees.
I'd just like to have those.
Okay, I'll make sure that you get them in Dropbox.
Everyone else is comfortable voting on it without those? You are. Other questions?
Just trying to understand what we would see in those. Is there something we need to look at those for? That
I
we
just like to make sure that things make sense. When I see a parentheses and a reference, and I can't see that. So that's, I would just prefer to have it all together, since that's what I'm voting for.
Do you want to postpone it to your next month, or next meeting, and happy with it?
Well, that's, the motion's on the table, I'm just
Does it-
giving my,
Does it slow anybody out? Does it cause any grief to anyone if we postpone?
We can't finalize any of our sales contracts until the master deed is recorded.
Okay, that's what I need to know. That's what I want to know.
All these documents have already been in the public record, correct?
All of the documents have already been in the public record.
any further comment?
With the exception of the tap fee, they've all actually been approved as part of the PUD agreement, and the road closure one came to you, like I said, you had to approve that, because that was one of the conditions of approval when you approved the final site plan.
Further questions or comments? Okay, please call the vote.
Smith,
I'd say no.
Chow,
Yes.
Cousins,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Shells,
Yes.
Keel.
No. Motion carries 4-2. New business item L2, consideration of assignment of rights under the 150 Jeffords PUD agreement.
Make that motion that we approve both assignment of rights for the PUD agreement for 50 Jeffords subject to the staff review dated and city attorney dated as described.
Second.
So,
Motion by Cousins, second by Zach. Thank you. Okay, sorry.
that's okay, I'm sorry, I jumped in.
No, you're okay.
So, this is again, part of the final site plan approval, we've already done PUD approvals. Gunther does have the right to assign developments to another entity, and our understanding is that's going to be 150 Jeffords LLC. However, there's been some confusion regarding the actual ownership, and part of that's because they're purchasing it through a land contract. And to clear up this confusion, Scott wanted and asked the applicant and their attorney for a very clear assignment of rights that would clearly identify who owned what and who was getting what and how this was being done. So Scott has reviewed this under the PUD agreement, or excuse me, he's reviewed it, he's determined it's acceptable and it's appropriate, and subject to only very minor corrections that may be necessary prior to the recording, like maybe a dot I dotted here and a T crossed there. This thing is ready to go. If you've got any questions about it, want more specifics regarding the legality of it, Scott is here, we can ask him questions.
Zach?
I'd ask that Mr. Menzel could point us to a couple of those minor changes, if you would.
Not to disagree with Michelle, but actually the assignment of rights under the PUD is fine in the form that you've got it right now. Basically, Gunther Building wants to form a separate LLC, if I'm not mistaken, to be the actual developer. And so you may or may not remember that Schultz Development owns part of the property, Mill Creek Terrace owns another part of the property. They're both selling to Gunther under a land contract. But the assignment is really to allow Gunther to assign the rights under the PUD to the 150 Jeffords LLC. It's a long way of saying kind of what's going on. But the document that you've got is actually okay in its current form. There won't need to be any changes to that document.
Just fill in the parcel number, tax ID numbers.
Oh yeah, I see it, I thought about it, so.
Right.
I just gotta put my glasses on.
Yeah, I mean, is this complete? Why are there blanks?
The plan development agreement hasn't been recorded yet, because today is the day you've just approved it. So those will go in, and whatever its letter and page is. Excuse me.
Yeah, but like in C I'm talking about.
Yeah, I don't believe they've closed yet. The assignee is is 150 Jeffords LLC, and as I understand it, they have not done the closing yet between Gunther's group and 150 Jeffords LLC. Although my understanding is they're controlled by the same people.
Correct. It's just a matter of funding because Gunther Building Company with Bank of Ann Arbor set the federal loan limits for the Dodd-Franks bill. So a way you get around the Dodd-Franks bill is you form an LLC. It's purely for banking. Bank of Ann Arbor wanted it done that way. So that will actually, it will all go in a row. Once we sign the loan documents, it's sold from Gunther to Jeffords, 150 Jeffords.
so those blanks would all be filled in when the information is known.
And then we would sign this?
The mechanics of how it gets signed is really up to you. How you want to handle that. Let's see, who is down here to sign? I'm sure. So, on page 7, there's signatures blocked for the mayor and for the city manager. You could certainly wait to sign this until we had more data about that. This could be, you could provide this however you wanted to do it, but it could, essentially they'll want it though, probably at the closing as part of the package or at some point. But depending on how you wanted to do it, you could sign it, hold it, you could wait until they knew those numbers more specifically and then had them filled in, and then you could sign it. It's more of a mechanical issue on that point.
Thank you. Any questions for Michelle or Scott?
Just a minor typo to point out. On page 7, I'm assuming it's West Big Beaver, not West Big Beav.
Yeah.
No, What's the view?
New road.
Further questions? Okay, please call the vote.
Fisher,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Cousins,
Yes.
Michelle's,
Yes.
Tell,
Yes.
Keel.
Yes. New business item L3, discussion of declaration of restrictive covenants for 150 Jeffords.
Okay, so
Mo-
this, I'm sorry,
Oh, go ahead.
kind of sorry.
Motion.
This is discussion. Gentlemen.
So this is currently there's a declaration of restrictive covenants that was recorded as part of the dam removal project. It pertains to the designated upland disposal area that was within the former dam impoundment. And the covenant encumbers parcels, and you've got them there, 08, 08, 06, 210, 060, and 056. 060 is owned by the city, and it includes a portion of the Mill Creek, and includes portions of Mill Creek Park and the Jeffords Road right-of-way. The parcel 056 is located entirely in Mill Creek Park. On the approved final site plan, and in the PUD agreement, Gunther will transfer certain property that is on their property to the city, and the city's agreed to transfer property that is in the right-of-way to them, so that it squares up the site. You may remember that from a discussion very early on. It is in, it was in the PUD, I'm sorry, in the PUD plan. That little portion A that would go, I'm sorry, B, that would go to Gunther is located within the 060 parcel. And as such, the covenant requires that the owner, that's the city, has to provide notice to MDEQ of any intent to transfer the property or any interest of the property. And we have to do that at least 14 days prior to any conveyance. The applicant does not want to have to disclose the information about this area to their property owners, because it really doesn't, there is no contamination issues on the Mill Creek, the 150 Jeffords property. So they're looking to have an amendment or revision to the declaration. And what they would like is city support when they go to MDEQ for this. excuse me. Pardon me. Any revision or an amendment, and by the way, this would be the second, second amendment, it's already been amended once, and that's in your packet. Any additional amendment or revision to the existing declaration still has to come in front of you for approval. And like, I don't remember who said, this is a discussion item, it's more to us to let you know what's going on and see if you have any objections.
So what would the amendment do?
The amendment, and Scott help me, it would,
Remove that
It would-
parcel, that piece of the parcel from the restricted covenant parcel. It
Right.
would basically just update the parcel description to remove the section that we're giving to Gunther, swapping it Gunther.
Right, there's a, on the other side of Jeffords is a sedimentation area, so that, because of that, the location of that, it extended across Jeffords. And so if they are successful in working with the DEQ to amend the declaration, it would exclude the part that they're receiving from the city from the quote-unquote affected parcel. That way, they wouldn't, to prospective purchasers, they wouldn't have to say, by the way, you know, part of our property is affected by this contamination. So, but it's also easy for the city just to send a notice to the DEQ that the city's gonna convey that little jagged strip. And that would certainly allow the city to sell the property, close on all of this. So how, again, administratively, whether, you know, Michelle sends the letter to DEQ or Gunther beats their head against the wall with DEQ to try to get them to amend it, that would be, I think, Gunther's ultimate goal, is to have it removed from that existing document that intimates that there's some kind of contamination nearby.
It's buried. Do I remember?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's
just
just
the
soils
soils.
with arsenic.
Yeah.
It's just the naturally moved stuff that was
Right.
taken, I mean, it's,
Right.
okay.
Do you remember how it
So,
goes?
so we'll see
We
this on a
under-
future agenda item then, or
Right.
what's the discussion? Do we wanna
just
do
an
it or
update.
don't? Oh, okay.
It was mainly to bring you up to speed on all of it instead of dumping all this on you when it came. Okay.
The problem is that when they go and sell the units and close, it's gonna come up on the title work. So Chase Bank, all the banks are gonna be like, oh, their little ears are gonna freak out by seeing contamination. Then you gotta pull out the site plan, you have to show where the corner is of the property on this big parcel and say we're nowhere near it, you know?
So we have
So we're gonna
3
try and
months?
just break it off.
So we have 3 months to get this done, 6 months to get this done?
Well,
We do it-
hopefully within 3 months, we can get it done, but
Okay.
it's not gonna stop us from going ahead. I mean,
So I'm just trying to understand that.
but we do want, you know, cooperation, because we're gonna try and get it removed, because it shouldn't be part of the parcel anymore anyway, it's getting lopped off.
Right.
So we're gonna try, but you never know how that'll go. Otherwise, we'll just go with exhibits for the banks when it comes up on the title work. But it doesn't really hit those.
So that I make sure I have a clear understanding, either the city is the title owner now can work with DEQ to get this changed, or Gunther, once we transfer it, then could do it. Is that correct? Either way, it can get to the same finish point,
I believe so.
and Gunther would prefer for us to do it because we have it now.
No, I think they want us to support what they're doing.
Okay, is there any cost to the city to do that?
To support them?
Yes.
Everything is on pass-through for this, so if there's any reviews, obviously when the amendment, I'm presuming it's gonna be an amendment, comes through, it's still gotta be reviewed by Scott.
Okay, doke. And that's coming
And
from
then we
us,
would
correct?
act.
I'm sorry,
And then we would act.
and then we would act, right.
Okay. Thank you.
Right, nothing's finalized until you've seen it and approved it. It can't
What
just
stops us
automatically.
from just amending it?
I'm sorry?
That's
What
what I'm,
stops us
that's
from
what
just
I'm missing.
amending it?
That's what I'm missing.
Why do we
don't
have to, I
understand.
mean,
I don't understand why, I mean, Scott's,
That's a
what
legal
Scott says,
question, I
beat
can't.
the
Right,
head,
I mean,
I mean,
if we've amended it
if
once.
it makes sense to do it, why don't we just do it?
Well, I think you'd have to, DEQ is the quote-unquote, in a way, the beneficiary. So you'd have to get the DEQ's approval to amend it. So that's, that
But I
is
would
gonna.
think that, yeah, I mean, but I would think if we tried to do that, we would probably be able to do that.
Sure. I assume that the DEQ will understand that this contaminated site, or the dirt, the covered dirt, is actually across the road from this development. But I guess it's really, it's something that Gunther is interested in doing for the ease of their own development, so I don't think that Michelle was going to necessarily push that string along. I think the idea was to let Gunther carry
Because
the
they
ball.
offered.
So the timeline's on them then?
Right.
Fair enough. Other questions, everybody good? Okay.
Let's get this project.
Business item L4, which is a consideration item, resolution to vacate certain public right-of-ways and convey said property to Mill Creek Terrace LLC.
I'll move the resolution.
One second.
Moved by Smith, seconded by Fisher.
So again, another just minor cleanup item. The transfer of the property that, those parcel A and B are currently in the public, identified as in the public right of way. It would clean up their boundaries and make it private property. In order to do that, there needs to be a vacation of the public right of way and the conveyance to Mill Creek. And that's what this document does. It's a resolution to do both of those.
And this is parcel. Parcel A is on Forest, right?
Parcel A is on Forest.
And then B is considered what?
B is that, if you go back to the last page of the previous discussion, B is that little triangle-like point at the northwest corner.
Contaminated.
Is it,
Allegedly.
The non-contaminated portion.
is that that's considered public property or public right of way, or that's not the
Currently,
same
it's,
thing?
currently it's considered public right-of-way.
Over there it is?
Right, yes. Scott just reminded me it's part of the old alley right-of-way.
I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
What's wrong, you've got a question?
I'm just trying to make sense of what it was.
It would have been the outline of the Mill Creek building property, the Mill Creek Terrace. Remember the divisions and transfers and conveyances you did with Mill Creek were based upon their building layout. But that it doesn't exactly fit what's actually out there and where sidewalks and such are.
And what's C?
C is the
They're
portion
conveying to
of,
us.
that's currently sidewalk there, where
So they're conveying that to us?
they're conveying that to us, yes.
I'm just trying to figure out why that alley. Okay. So that was a platted alley, Scott? Is that what you think?
I think so. I mean, the thing I'm looking at is proposed boundary line adjustment sketch, which I'm not sure what you're looking at, but was
That's
dated,
from, yeah.
this was dated May 9th of 2017. And underlying part of that, you remember when we did all that stuff with the bank and that project where we put in that parking lot back there?
It was the Jeffords
Well, I
Street
mean,
alley.
the survey plan and the
project.
thing says there was an alley that was vacated.
Yeah, so, I mean, my drawing is.
But only a portion of that is in the triangle area.
That could be. So I think the easiest way to think about it, Mr. Mayor, would perhaps be that the part of the motion, the resolution to vacate would, apply to anything that needs to be vacated. But the second part of the resolution is to authorizing the conveyance of the property to Gunther. So if there's any part of that northern triangle that is not technically in the alley, it would still be covered by the second part of the resolution. I myself don't exactly know what that little triangle really comprises. If it's to be part of the building or if it's just aesthetics, I don't really know. But that's part of the swap that they're giving up the parcel C, and that parcel A and parcel B is what they wanted.
So is the first whereas then correct? Where it says we have the authority to vacate to the council?
The power to vacate is given to the council. If you read the whole, the power to vacate alleys is given to council. Those statutory provisions grant the authority to vacate to the city council. Maybe if they just use the same template as when we did this originally in 2008 to show.
Part of what we're vacating, is that part of the parcel that we're amending?
You're basically vacating what needs to be vacated and then conveying all of the property. So if there's part of the property that doesn't need to be vacated, then we own it and we're conveying it. If it needs to be vacated, then now it's vacated and then we're conveying it.
I guess I'm just asking, I'm trying to put all the stuff in order. So there's something going to the DEQ to get parcel 60
Right, so that,
amended.
the
We
upper,
want the covenant amended.
the upper right corner is what you guys are vacating, and that is what is contaminated on that big parcel. Well, I mean, that piece isn't contaminated, but that's part
The
of it.
triangle piece is in public right of way. A portion of that triangle piece is in parcel 060, which is encumbered by the covenant, the restricted covenant. Two separate things, but they play together.
So you'll be revising the legal description of parcel 60 then?
Correct, to remove.
When you, prior to or before you go to the state?
Well, it would have to be done on any document the amendment document.
No, it would be now, right.
Yeah, it would have to go on.
Prior
the
to.
Part of it now is part of the title work, not prior to the state. Not prior to the DEQ, just asking for the restricted covenant to be removed.
I don't have any further questions, sorry.
paperwork is a bit complicated.
Yeah, I think the next time, I'd like to see more of a layout of this stuff in order or something. I'm not sure that I follow in the order of everything that the developer's trying to actually do. And therefore, I feel like we're asked to do a whole bunch at the same time without knowing the overall timeline of this, but maybe that's just me. I understand what we're trying to vacate and why, so. Zach, sorry.
Ticky-tack procedural process. Does this vacation have to happen before the transfer? Well, I guess because this lists 2 Mill Creek Terrace LLC, and my understanding it's gonna be,
And Mill Creek has to, right, because they're still the,
so this comes first and then the other one after that? Okay.
Okay, please call the vote. Seeing no more questions?
Tell,
Yes.
Michelle's,
Yes?
Cousins?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Fisher?
yes.
Keel?
Yes. Motion carries. New business item L5, consideration of memorandum of understanding for redevelopment ready community program.
I'll make a motion. Nobody made a motion?
No,
No.
Okay, I'll make that motion that we work with the process of sign this agreement that we work on the redevelopment ready committees, with this memorandum of understanding.
Okay, motion by Cousins to approve that. To adopt, I guess.
Second.
Second by Tell.
So I know you've been long awaiting this, and it's now here for you. This is the memorandum of understanding with the MEDC. You did one back in 2014. The process was a little different. Memorandum of understanding came first, and then you did the application. The application process came first this time, so that we could be accepted into the program, and this is the final portion that MEDC needs, and that's the memorandum of understanding, laying out what MEDC's responsibilities are in this process and what the city's responsibilities are. It's, like I said before, it's the same agreement, the only thing is the application process is taken out. It does have quantitative dates for when they expect things to be done, but they also allow or have a process for you to request extensions as needed.
Mr. Smith?
Just on the first paragraph of the memorandum, it says the effective date is January 8th.
That was because that's the date that they had sent it over to us. We'll have to have it changed because it has to be the date that you approve it.
That was going to be my question. I also wanted to point out that it has specific hard dates for us, but not for the RRC or MEDC.
What is it for us?
Dan, you want to take them out?
No. Just thought it was worth mentioning.
And you'll notice the very last paragraph on the second page, excuse me, is either party can terminate this MOU within 30 days written notice. So you still have the ability to opt out. You're not, if you decide to approve this tonight, you're not stuck with it for the rest of your lives.
Any questions? Okay, please call the vote.
Fisher?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Cousins?
Yes.
Tell?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Keo?
No. Motion carries 5-1. New business item L6, consideration of the proposal from Smith Group for grant assistance for the Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund grant.
I'll make that motion. To set the, approve the proposal from Smith Group KBR for Mill Creek Park Phase 2, grant assistance in the amount not to exceed $7,500.
Motion by Fisher, second by Zach. Thank you. Justin? Oh, question? Zach?
Yes, so we, not to exceed 7,500, but when I look on page 2 of the letter of proposal, they say 7,800, so I'm curious how we were able to save $300 from what they said.
It was likely a typo
On theirs or on ours?
on ours.
So it should really be
So,
not to exceed
7,800.
So that could be part of the motion?
The 78.
We typically have that in there.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. Mr. Justin, sir, is there anything we need to know?
We have submitted for the TIP grant to MDOT for phase 2. It's looking like we are not going to get the MDOT segment of TAP grant funds. So we're going to be resubmitting for the SEMCOG segment of TAP grant funds in the middle of March. But alongside that, we're going to be, Paul and I will be actively working over the next couple of weeks to try and get the MDNR Trust Fund grant in time for the public hearing in the middle of March. We're ready to start rolling on that. MDNR released their application package at the end of January. So we have it in hand and ready to start filling out those questions. It's a relatively intense application package compared to TAP and some of the other grants that we've applied to before. So having Paul help me with that is going to be invaluable.
Council
I thought you
question?
were gonna ask for a raise.
Paul?
Well, as I think I mentioned before, this project is lacking in that it doesn't make connectivity as we had planned to clear the Shield Road into the high school. And I also, I would like to ask whether if the TAP grant doesn't go through the present process and it goes through the SEMCOG, it's still going to be requested to $500,000.
Yes.
So we'll still be able to work on getting that amount that we have here.
Correct.
What if there is a problem in the alignment of the trail, either through any environmental things or any other things that would come up? Is there a revision process that we go through to correct that, or do we just?
So we actually had a preliminary meeting with the NDEQ to kind of walk through the site and get their notes on what the site looks like, where the proposed trail could and should go. And we got their notes back, and the location that the trail is proposed along the creek is fairly clean, so that they're relatively supportive of the alignment.
Well, and all of these are applied for before you go through design, this
Well,
project
I
is
got
already
that, I
designed,
got
so there is some,
I got
they realize that there was some.
changes
It
that
has
could
to
be
be
made.
literally
Correct.
designed still. It's.
So with that, I guess the question is, and with my brief discussions I've had with the school, and they seem to have maybe a slightly different attitude than they had before, that there may be a way that this could be connected to the Shield Road and to the other. What was the difference in point A and point B instead of going up to Baker Road and going from the end of the trail, as I call it, I guess, as you come out from the creek there, and then extending that behind the school? And was the second part of that question, and was one of the main reasons, besides cost, was there reluctance to have that trail in the proximity of the playgrounds as such. And was that one of the reasons that we switched our philosophy?
Well, so one of the major reasons is what you described, is the schools through Dr. Timmis expressing to us a level of not being comfortable with the proposed alignment being that close to the playground. So in order to get at least a segment of the project done this year in 2019, we changed the alignment to meet their concerns.
Well, the other problem is if we moved it to where it was further away from the playground, it got into more wetlands and possibly boardwalk, an area that wasn't surveyed by the MDEQ when we did our wetland delineation, and a whole host of, we couldn't just move it closer to the wetland because the cost would increase, and it was already a stretch for us to afford what we had.
And boardwalk is significantly more expensive than asphalt path. So if we did move it closer to the creek, then that cost goes up fairly significantly.
Well, I saw the alignments, as you know, I'm pretty familiar with this space out there. So the question that I had was, the first question was, what is the difference between A and B? Doing it as we had originally planned, or having it what we have now in our alignment?
I guess I'm not
We didn't change the
sure
cost
the
estimate
question.
between the two, but when you moved the path, did you change the cost estimate?
No,
Right, we kept the same cost estimate.
because
So we did not get a cost estimate for moving it to where the schools wanted us to move it. We didn't pay to have that done.
correct. And the reason that it was of similar cost was that in the originally proposed alignment, that would be mostly asphalt. And being able to go out to Baker, most of that's going to be asphalt.
Or, well,
Say that again.
So in the alignment where it would go close to the playground, down to Shield,
Yes.
that segment would have been able to be mostly asphalt. Being able to go out to Baker, that portion is gonna be mostly asphalt, so there's
So you were
there's a
just swapping A for B.
similar cost. If we had gotten a quote for an alignment going down to Shield near the creek, I would imagine that cost would be significantly higher because a lot of that would have to be boardwalk.
Okay. There was another alignment that was close to the school that dropped off the trail there where the original trail was, okay? That was never ever explained or examined to find out what that cost would be if we dropped off instead of putting the asphalt up, here you just dropped off, so it would not be in proximity to the school, to the playgrounds, I should say, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And it would be still the ability to connect, but that you would drop down further off that line. That was never examined.
Closer to the creek.
Well, closer, the creek's a long ways away at that spot, okay? You're 100 yards away from the creek at the spot where that asphalt trail would be in the creek.
In the originally drafted map of the trail.
Correct.
There was a secondary segment that was proposed to be boardwalk that would have been just off of the creek.
I know.
Can I ask a question? Just when you originally talked to the schools
Mhm.
on that, how did we convey where that path to Shield was going?
We met out at the site with Dr. Timmis. It was myself and Paul Evanoff.
So you physically stood in the location where the path would be?
Yes, and we walked back down through the outdoor nature center.
I mean, this is back where we cut up there the day we were out with the DEQ, right?
Correct.
Okay, so they stood out there and looked at it. They know where okay, this wasn't just based on the red line on the drawing or a black dash line.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, I had
agree.
a copy of the map in one
there.
hand and.
This is sort of like they don't want the bike lane comment.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're really.
Exactly right.
I don't really know what their goal is here and what they're afraid of and what they think is wrong with what's going on here. But it seems like the best way to overcome it would be to get more than Dr. Timmis out there and have a conversation about how do we That would be my suggestion. I don't, and if you want to lead that, I'm all for it with Justin, you know, my point is I can get more than whoever's making the decision out there.
Well, I guess you know, if this is what we've got now, okay?
Yeah, I'm not
I
sure
can
if
live-
that's
I can
right.
live with what we got now to get it done, okay? But it doesn't solve the problem of the connectivity, okay? So my question is, where are we as it relates to the schools and our desire to still have connectivity to that, you know, of our original plan that we had, okay? To have connectivity, which I thought was a real goal. And then, so let me just finish. And then, as it relates tonight to what Jeff Hardcastle says, it makes a difference as it relates also to the border trail, because if you, and the one that goes to Chelsea, but if you go down to Parker, if it comes down to Parker Road, then the question becomes, do you continually come down that Dexter Chelsea Road to the A&W or wherever you want to go, or you drop off and come down into our land on the other side of the creek there, or do you go down Parker Road all the way to Shield and then come back to where? To connect where, okay?
I get it.
And so there's all these extenuating circumstances that lead us to think that maybe this connectivity could still be all done without the expense of some of the other stuff.
Is there a path through Creekside around the football field to Shield?
Yeah.
Yes, on the
Yes.
back.
Right, you can connect to all that from Baker, so you can
is
take
that
the
not
path to
open?
Baker, just take the path to Baker, walk along Baker, and then get on the Creekside Trail.
You really don't do anything,
You
because you're
can
still gonna
connect
cut
to
right
it,
through
it's not that you can't.
Well-
That's how I do it when I walk to the high school from my house.
Is the land used?
I just
By the high
I don't
school.
understand what the objection is. I mean, the whole idea would be, I think what staff's saying is that if you came out to Baker, if you wanted to get to the high school, you just turn right and you go through the campus, you go through Creekside.
Right, and I think the long-term
It's not
goal
the
is.
actual
I
area.
don't, but what's funny about that is the very same people that they're worried about being on the path behind them
Right.
will now be going right through the campus.
Right.
That is,
That was the point I was trying to get to.
So
You're absolutely right.
So I don't know if they don't get that, or, that's why I think a conversation needs to be had about.
the answer to Donna's question is,
Yes.
it's used by the elementary school and the, across the street had been used at times, and also, Creekside now, okay? The high school uses the creek behind the new high school.
Well,
What is,
it seems to me if that many students are using that area, the school would want to cooperate and would want to,
open it up.
yeah.
Well, that's the frustration I had when I heard what I thought was a fairly illogical answer to why they
I mean,
didn't
I'm
want it.
not,
I agree, yeah.
I mean, I'm actually not objecting to the spur that comes out to Baker. It's no different than the spur that would come out,
Right.
behind Grandview to
Yeah.
Grand.
I
I mean,
agree.
you don't, once you get on it, you don't have to be stuck back there until you get to Shield. It makes complete sense to get back to the city.
Quite
So, and a couple of points. Number one, the spur out to Baker was originally planned in the 2009 Mill Creek Park Master Plan. So I think getting that done, I think, has been a goal since the conceptualization of that map. Number two, I don't think that this has to be the last phase. I think that the long-term goal is to have a connection to Shield, one way or another. But if we're able to get this project done now, I think that that's in the long-term interest of the trail. And number three, I think having the feasibility study conducted, as Jeff Hardcastle discussed, of either going down Parker or continuing down Shield and then making the crossover the creek, I think that'll give us some indication of what the best route is for the border-to-border and Iron Belt Trail.
I support all, I agree that we're gonna do what we're gonna do now. We're gonna apply for the money, we get it, but I don't want us to stop there and say that we can't also examine the other connectivity that we have. And I think there's a slight change in attitude, maybe a major change in attitude, that they think it can be worked out. And I agree with you, Sean, 100%. You know, how do you say one's good and the other one's bad? When you talk about kids, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense, you know?
Do you know what their concern is? Are they afraid the kids are gonna smoke cigarettes back there?
No, they're afraid that somebody's gonna abscond with a kid off the playground and take him down the trail on their bike, I guess. I don't know what their concern
You
is.
can do
but-
that now.
You're right, they
That was
can
a
do
concern
that
that was
now.
expressed to me, was
Any
it was
place.
having a large number of people going down a trail immediately adjacent to a playground during
Right.
school hours.
You're gonna grab them.
As soon as them teachers see more than 2 people out there, the cops are gonna be all over it.
As much as I wouldn't like it, put a fence there. Solve the problem, put a fence, we got fences everywhere, put a fence there, separate it somehow. I don't, it can be worked, I'm okay with what we're doing here. But I do, well, I'll wait till council comments to make that.
Okay, so the motion on the table is to approve the grant assistance proposal from JGR for not to exceed $7,800.
Correct.
We budgeted 10,000, so it's in that. Any questions related directly to that? Okay, please call the vote on that.
Cousins,
Yes.
Tell,
Yes?
Fisher,
Yes.
Michelle's,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Keel.
Yes. Motion carries, thank you.
Thank you.
Council comments? Mr. Cousins, if you're ready?
Yeah, I guess, that, you know, I still emphasize what Jeff said tonight. Will, in talking to a number of people in Washington County parks, is that they still think that Dexter will be the hub of biking and hiking for years and years to come. And that is a blessing in one sense and a curse in the other, because it is well established, as Ray's mentioned, you know, we get the parking of people coming here and then it takes up other parking. We still need to deal with the idea of parking and how we can help solve that problem. And that has to be worked out with the people that also are doing these things, okay? So this can't be our solution or our problem. And the idea that we need to form some kind of a committee to help us, I think that's a good idea, and try to do that somehow to work on that process of the connectivity there and the parking issue. One of the things that could be done, that I think would help solve the problem, is that there could be parking out at the golf course at Hudson Mills, and they're willing to put a spur that goes from the golf course out to the trail that would be connected there to the Hudson connector. And that would solve a couple of problems. It would be additional parking out there for people that would do it, would park out there, and they could walk right to the trail and bike right to the trail, and then use the trail from there, and have parking out there, outside of our city. Now, that may not be the best for some of the other auxiliary things are there, but if people would come to eat, they'll stop and eat, or they'll stop at the Bayfair, they'll do what they need to do there. So I think we just need to have a good discussion about how that works in our city, and that connectivity, probably whether it's going to be Parker or whether it's going to be Dexter Chelsea Road as well. So I'll be happy to volunteer to work on that committee. And I'm leaving Thursday morning to go to California to see my sister for a week, and I'll be back.
Have a safe trip.
I'm looking forward to it, looking for some sunshine and not a lot of snow.
I hear it's raining.
Pretty. I can live with the
Mudslide.
Fire. It's apocalypse.
And it's windy, that's a good part.
Mr. Dell?
Boy, I can't talk to that.
Ms. Fisher?
I'm not tonight, thanks.
Ms. Jones, anything to
Nothing.
clear up to the agenda?
I don't think so.
All good? Mr. Smith? Zach?
Looking at the agenda and all the projects we got coming up, I was reminded of the Chinese curse that goes something to the effect of, "May you live in interesting times." And we sure are. That's it.
I do have one question.
Back to Mr. Tell.
In regards to 150 Jeffords,
Yeah.
how far away they are from starting? Because I'm worried about this parking lot they committed to over on the forest.
I think they start in the spring now.
Right, they're probably not going to start until April when the weather's better.
Okay, so they will.
But before they can start any construction, it's in the PUD agreement, the temporary parking lot must be constructed.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
It'll probably be better to have it a little bit later, because
But
maybe a little bit
everyone's
more solid.
Everyone's
gravel.
having a fit.
Over the upcoming project?
Parking.
Oh.
There's always a fit down there about parking.
So we can do something about how this new temporary parking lot is coming. And
Ray, I drove through town today at 5:30, right after the workshop we had, or before the workshop we had. In front of the old Huron camera, or 3 Bird now, those spaces from the coffee shop down, there wasn't one car.
Either.
I almost stopped and took a picture. There wasn't one car parked there.
Are there people be upset with me because they couldn't park in front of the bakery.
Oh, yeah, that's the way it is.
It's perception.
I don't work at the bakery, I don't care.
All right, we're back around to non-arranged.
You carry gallons of paint from your place.
Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak? Okay, I will seek a motion for adjournment. Moved by Smith. All in favor?
Yeah.
Have a good night, everybody.
I was dealing with Wally for a minute.